This is the Skin Science Podcast. I'm Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, and here we'll investigate everything skin science and dissect it from a scientific perspective, analyze it from a medical perspective, critique it from a consumer perspective, and give insight from an industry perspective. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. It is our pleasure today to again have Dr. Brian Jones in the chair. How you doing, Brian?
Not too bad. I guess I don't look like Angela, so I guess I'll do the best I can.
You're all beautiful in your own way.
All right, there we go.
All right, and then we also have Dr. Jose Maldonado sitting with us today. How are you doing, Jose?
I'm doing great, but I am upset Angela's not here, and I hope she knows that when she listens to this.
Okay, I don't know why you guys are kissing butt with Angela, but anyway.
Oh, I'm upset at her. I'm upset she's not here.
I just said I don't look like Angela. I didn't say that I didn't look worse or better. I just said I don't look like
so
Angela.
So we're all mad at Angela.
I am mad at Angela. She is not here. She let the team down, and she has to know that when she listens to this.
All right. I am glad that I'm not the only one. Anyway, we're just kidding. We love Angela, but we are mad at her.
Yes, we are.
All right, so in today's episode, I forgot the peanut gallery. I was told to make a better name, but we have Alan and Seti back there, our producer, or director producers. I know you're a producer as well, but anyway, there's multiple producers. So today we are going to do a mailbag episode, and so Dr. Maldonado basically went and asked a bunch of his friends what kind of questions they would have for skin scientists. But before we get into that, I do want to highlight again, my die puzzle box, and I asked Seti what the symbol was that was inside the puzzle box that was also on the egg, and she clarified it that it's it could be two things. It could be at peace, which is something that you get when you solve these puzzles, or it could be cheap, which I'm hoping it's not because then I overpaid for these puzzles. But these are actually very coveted Japanese puzzles where you actually have to get on a waiting list and do a lottery to get some of these puzzles. Not all of them. But anyway, what I'm going to do is, because I ran out of puzzles, is I'm just going to show one per subject. And then I didn't run out of puzzles, but for today I did. And then what we'll do is maybe we'll have somebody trying it as we're discussing or something and see on the next part of the podcast whether or not they're able to do it. But for today, we're just going to show that one again. Again, these are, if you can afford this, it's probably about $120 for this. It's not that expensive, but it's actually very artistic. It's a very nice piece of woodworking. So if you can get that, and you like puzzles, this is actually one to get. So there's that. All right, so let's start with the mailbag. Jose, what did you get?
Okay, so a lot of these questions that came in had to do with acne. So let's start with the first one. Is my acne linked more to my genetics or my environment? Or how much does my diet play in?
Okay, and so I guess, Brian, I'm going to let you go first. I do have thoughts on the genetics part, but I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, there are some links towards diet, but again, it's not been conclusive that everything around diet is towards chocolate and eating greasy foods and the like, or working at McDonald's and the like. But there is some information regarding that as towards certain diets and certain conditions and certain individuals. Certainly, genetics has a play, and then I'll let you answer that question, but I'll just stop there as far as and let you answer the genetics.
Okay.
So,
well, as far as diet and genetics, I think some of that goes hand in hand, right? Because genetically, if we react to certain things in our diet, and so for instance, if we produce more oils than most people, if we eat a certain food, that's going to affect the microbiome, which will, or it can also affect the skin barrier. A lot of those things are tied into skin issues. But also, you have to think about, there is science behind, there's research behind the fact that when you look at the immune cells of people who have acne and the way that they react to certain bacteria strains, whether they become inflammatory or not, some of that seems to be where they're predisposed to inflammation when they have acne versus when they don't. Now, the real question is whether or not modifying, because we do know that certain strains of bacteria, such as certain strains of C. acnes, can actually influence the immune system to be less inflammatory. So the real question is, for those people that they've done those studies on, if you were to expose them to the right strains of bacteria, would you see that change? Is it purely genetic or is it epigenetic? Right. And that's the real key, is that when we talk about genetics, it's more than just what the gene says. It's epigenetics as well, which is what's influencing that gene to act in a certain way, whether it's upregulated, down, whether it's spliced differently, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the jury's still out as far as, how exactly what exactly makes a genetic predisposition, as well as whether or not our diet affects it. Because we do know that, like for instance, certain strains of disease-associated bacteria can secrete porphyrins, and that's part of the way that physicians can look with a Woods lamp and see the shininess, or what do you call them, the fluorescence.
Fluorescence,
of the
the porphyrin ring and sort of getting it to glow.
For our listeners who don't know what that is, what's a porphyrin, Brian?
It is a ring structure that actually, essentially, to your point, fluoresces under Woods lamp or UV light.
Oh.
So it's a molecule. It's an intermittent molecule between, like, it needs to be, to make heme, which is the component of blood. It's one of the intermediate molecules, right? I'm not sure why it's made by skin bacteria, because they don't produce blood. But regardless, that's one of the...
Well, it could be, again, to the point of just trying to produce an environment that is beneficial towards them, I guess.
Right.
So
I'm
versus
not sure.
being a,
Well, interestingly, porphyrins, when you hit them with UV light, they actually become free radicals.
Yeah.
And that's not conducive to anything living there. So I'm not sure why I'll have to look into that, because that's probably something we should think about. I do know that porphyrins bind to certain moieties on the skin and such, and so maybe it's protective in the way that they position them around themselves or something. Regardless, that's a rabbit trail, because the idea is that the health-associated strains don't produce as many. But the more interesting part is that when you add things like B12, vitamin B12, in the health-associated strains, it really doesn't do anything. But with the disease-associated strain, they actually increase significantly their production of the porphyrins. And so that could contribute to inflammation, because they're irritating, but also the free radicals, which can damage the overall skin as well. So I think, yes, there's some linkage. We just don't know 100% of what is that linkage at this point.
Okay. Follow up to that question is there any research that supports that any specific type of diet is best to clear acne? Now, there's lots of information out there about people like, I switched to an all-meat diet or this type of diet and all my gut issues went away. Is there anything like that for acne?
I'm not sure if there's a one-size-fits-all, but...
Yeah, I guess, whether it be the caveman diet or any of the other variations that go on there. There is some link, again, we talked about it a little bit, before, about milk and whole milk versus skim milk, and some of the fats that go along that seem to be, or pasteurization, talking about, they don't know exactly what that is. In some studies, it shows that there actually is a case or association between milk drinkers who are drinking skim milk or low percentage fat compared to whole milk, and the whole milk are better. But again, the data's kind of it's not clear. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can fully say that one particular diet's been endorsed for acne. I will say that, that the gut microbiota, just like the skin microbiota, can influence inflammation systemically. And we know that, for instance, a diet high in sugars, the ferment products that the microbes make is much more prone for inflammation. And so if you have if your diet's very high in refined sugars, refined anything like flours, that can be used as food source for fermentation, which can actually, some of the stuff could be inflammatory. And the problem is most people think that the skin is very far removed from the gut, but it's not. There's a connection between the microbes of the gut, which release certain molecules that then can in turn affect the immune system, which can affect the skin, and vice versa, where the skin microbes can actually affect the immune system and affect the gut. And even the central nervous system to some point, actually not to some point, to a large extent.
And when you think about the size of the skin, the sheer area of the skin, and then the fact that there's actually more immune cells in the layers of the skin than anywhere else in the body, it does show the fact that it does have a great influence regarding what happens and what shows on the skin.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question for you guys. I saw an Instagram ad that said applying a virus to our face can clear our acne. Is that safe? So many of us have been spending the last couple of years avoiding viruses, so now they want us to put one on our face. Is it safe, guys?
Yeah, I know this company. Are you familiar?
No, not actually.
Okay. So basically I'm not going to say the company name. There's a couple that were working on it, but these were, when I was starting Zycrobe, these companies were in the same kind of ecosystem and incubators and such. And their kind of philosophy was, again, I believe, a flawed one, which is you need to get rid of C. acnes on the skin, or P. acnes at the time, C. acnes now. And so their whole thought was, if we can find a bacteriophage that is specific for P. acnes, we can just flood the face with it. It'll destroy all the P. acnes. You won't get the antibiotic resistance that you do with antibiotics. But again, I felt very strongly that that was a flawed strategy because while you have the good bacteria that have things like CRISPR that can sometimes avoid phage destruction, the part that's not good is that you have the bad bacteria that at times has shown that if you put populations of these bacteria through these phage therapies, they can actually adapt. And then you have phage resistance, and now you've basically given it another way in which it can fight you.
Right.
And so just like with antibiotics and other and AMPs and such, is that when it's a small, like when it's like one or two that are bad and you're trying to get rid of them, it's great because it just destroys them all. When you have a whole population and you keep on bombarding it, if one gets away, it can just start a whole bunch
It'll
of them.
replicate and move, take over the population.
Right, like a zombie. You know, it's like the zombie movies, right? It's like all it takes is one bite or one monkey bite from the lab, and you end up with 28 days later. And so, again, it really comes down to, for instance, then the other thing that really kind of annoyed me with that strategy.
Well, can I ask a real quick question? Can you tell us what bacteriophage is for those listeners who don't know what that is?
It's a virus specific for bacteria. Yeah. Okay. So it can't affect a human cell, only bacteria. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So the other part of that strategy that I was not a fan of is that anybody that has listened to this podcast knows that years of my research has been around why C. acnes, not all C. acnes are equal, and why some of them are not only beneficial, but almost critical to the skin health. And so we don't want to kill all C. acnes, nor could we, because even if we killed 99% of them, which is something that you hear in a lot of advertisements, 99.9%, even if you kill them, you're going to have C. acnes on your skin. It's just inevitable. Everybody does on the face of the earth. And so what's going to happen is you're going to get the ones that are most resistant, which are typically pathogenic, and they're just going to colonize your skin. And so really this idea that you can remove C. acnes is, I believe, a flawed approach. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I agree. I mean, wiping out anything in its entirety pretty much is a bad idea. I mean, there are some things that, Z states that you're trying to get rid of, but in this case, again, we've shown, and you've got data that you've got from all the work that you've been doing. It shows that there's certain C. acnes that, to your point, are extremely beneficial, not only just for acne, but for, like you mentioned before, basic skincare or basic skin health. And so, there's this mixture that's required to actually be healthy, and to wipe one thing out or try to wipe one thing out, puts everything in disbalance and can cause issues. So again, I'd say I wouldn't recommend that, I guess, as far as a therapy for acne.
Right. Again, I guess the question is, do people really believe still that it's an imbalance or an overgrowth of C. acnes? Because we've seen in literature in multiple studies that almost 100% for some people, at least 90% on average, of the follicle is C. acnes, even in healthy individuals. If anything, it's more in healthy individuals. Right. So why is it that we're trying to get rid of it? Because we know that less C. acnes is actually in the follicle, as well as some things like atopic dermatitis. Less C. acnes is associated with atopic dermatitis, with acne, with aging. So really, my feeling is that strategy is flawed for a number of reasons. Now, what I would say is that those viruses aren't going to hurt your own skin cells, your own human physiology, but it can hurt you indirectly by removing C. acnes, which can be protective through their antioxidant activity, their anti-inflammatory activity.
And we've seen that as essentially as far as other bacteria, Staph aureus and the like, as far as getting that issue where it's a worsening case of skin condition versus worrying about acne.
Oh, because of retinoids, you mean? Yeah. Like yeah, that's true. Because if you reduce oils, you reduce C. acnes because that eats the oils, and then you have more infections. Yeah. So that's again. So we're not going to badmouth any company in particular, but what we will say is that I think there's some holes in that particular philosophy.
I have a my own personal follow-up question then. Is this virus specific to C. acnes, or
Yes.
what would happen if this virus mutated and started targeting other bacteria?
Well, I will say we shouldn't call it virus because I guess it is a type of virus,
Or
bacteriophage.
bacteriophage.
So,
Yeah.
but virus typically implies eukaryotic cell, but I guess it is technically a virus. But can it mutate to affect? Yeah, I guess it could. It really comes down to just like a human virus can, but
It could, I guess.
yeah, they're typically pretty specific. Bacteriophage.
Okay, let's move on to acne scars. I have acne scars. I've tried every ointment I've seen on Instagram to get rid of them, but nothing works. What actually works to get rid of acne scars?
What do you think, Brian?
Well, we try not to make this commercial, so.
Was that really a question? Or?
This was actually sent to me by my friend who has really bad acne scars, and he really wants to get rid of them.
Well, he needs to come be in one of the studies then.
Well, there are different modalities as towards that are cleared by the FDA as towards improvements in acne scars. One is microneedling with skin pen, which we sell, and so I want to be clear on that. So, again, the first recommendation would be microneedling.
What else? I think retinoids are approved for scarring, right? Or is that off-label?
I think that's off-label, not specifically for acne scars. There are some, as towards the reduction of acne scars by stopping the form of acne that would lead to acne scars. So there are products that claim that Epiduo, for one of them, makes a claim as towards helps prevent acne scars. It doesn't necessarily treat acne scars, but prevents them. But lasers as well.
So fractional treatments, I guess. Fractional remodeling treatments of some sort.
Okay. So you know who you out there. You sent me this question, so listen and you'll get your answer.
Well, I think there's one of those things where anything that you want to do, you have to have proper expectations. It's very difficult to 100% get rid of any type of scar, but you can definitely soften them significantly.
Right. I want to get a question that I got multiple times, and everything I'm seeing that a lot of people they're getting their information from Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's kind of out there, but I think you guys can answer this one. I saw people on Instagram and TikTok putting onions on their skin, saying it had amazing benefits for them. Any truth, or is this just fake news?
Well, there's materials that talk about like stretch marks and like using an onion bud extract that have been touted for decades. And there are natural materials that have benefit towards skin.
What's the onion bud? What do they use that for? That onion bud extract that you?
Oh, for stretch marks?
Is this what they're using it for?
They're just saying they like put. You know how people put cucumbers on their eyes? They're kind of
put onions on your eyes.
They're not putting. They're putting on on their skin. Like if they have like a patch of skin that's kind of hyperpigmentation or something, they're just putting it there.
So just for any skin,
anything
anything that ails you,
or just like, or it's these influencers they'll put something on their face like the onion, and they're like, take it off, and they're like, don't you see my skin is so much more smoother, texture's better.
Well, there are enzymes that could be essentially doing the benefit.
Exfoliation, maybe.
But they refer to the onion bud as towards an early, not the full onion that you get at the grocery store, but essentially at the beginning, essentially having activities of cell growth, and they talk about all the different things like stem cells, plant stem cells having extract or being able to produce materials that would then stimulate different things within skin.
Yeah, there's anti-scar creams that were made from onion type of products, which was you're talking about stretch marks.
Stretch marks and
and so I think with onions, that's an interesting one because I have not seen that before, like people actually putting raw onions on their face. But what I will say, interestingly, is that in my kind of realm of research where I'm looking at senolytics and such, I do know that apigenin can be obtained from onions.
Yeah.
And so onions are pretty rich in apigenins, although for a young influencer, putting it on for a few minutes is not going to do a whole lot. But it's a CD38 blocker, so that would increase cell metabolism. I mean, I don't know how that would work in a young person, whether that would. So it's interesting. Maybe I'm going to get an onion out tonight and see what happens. But I doubt it's going to move the needle 100%. The one thing I do say I do want to say about these types of like do-it-yourself at home type of remedies or
And there are a
things.
lot of those out there.
Yeah,
There's so
it's
many.
you have to be very careful because you can burn your skin off. Like for instance, things like lemon juice and stuff. It's very acidic. You don't want to. There was one that somebody did that, like papaya, for instance. Papaya has an enzyme
Correct.
that can really
Papaya.
harm you if you just slather it on your face and just let it sit there.
Yeah, correct. I just
Yeah.
named the papain.
Yeah, and so you got to be careful. And I've even seen a physician on a like a little YouTube video promoting some of this stuff too. You got to be careful. There's a reason why. I mean, yeah, not all skincare companies are great, but there's a reason why the FDA governs the way that you put preservatives and stuff in. Because also, if you put something in a refrigerator, a mash of some sort, or if you let it sit out, you could even get. There's people who've died by leaving food out and eating it later from
Mold and
toxins from the microbes.
Correct.
So you got to be really careful in this do it your own type of mentality. But the onion thing, sure, I'll try it tonight to see what happens. But
Well, is
I
it
don't-
a red onion, a yellow onion, a white onion? Is it,
Yeah, well, I have
it a
to,
magic
I'll have to, let
onion?
me get
Yeah.
on TikTok and I'll find you those videos, right?
Okay.
yeah,
I'll send you the
let's not
TikTok.
put too much merit on TikTok. But
Okay.
so
Okay, this could be the ultimate truth or the ultimate myth, but pore sizes. Can you really change them with just cold and hot water, which is something I've been told before?
like permanently change them?
Yeah, that if you apply cold
or even
water,
temporarily.
Well,
temporarily.
temporarily,
Yeah, if you
there's-
apply enough cold water, you can shrink them down, and they'll be you can't notice them. Use hot water to open them up.
Well, you may see
Is-
vasoconstriction and vasodilation depending on, again, the cold or the heat. That can make a difference regarding the appearance, but it's going to be very transient. I mean, or it's not going to last
Yeah.
very long.
I think it depends on how you define pore size.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember that sometimes a pore size is made more it's made to look larger because you have more liquid in your skin, so you have more texture because it's more I don't want to say plump, but it's like what do we call it, edema, edematous.
Edematous? Yeah.
Edematous. It's just I don't want to use that word. It has more. There's more swelling. Yeah. So if you have more swelling, so you got to remember your pores are like. It's kind of like those balloon or those pool floaties, where they have the cup holders or whatever.
Oh yes, okay.
And when you blow them up, the cup holder, the more air you put in, the cup holder doesn't move; it stays the same. But the balloon around it or the floaty around it gets bigger, and then that way, it's kind of the same idea. Is that when you let some of the air out, the hole may look very different than when you have a big kind of surrounding cushion. And if you look really close to people who have large pores, myself being one of them, part of the reason is because inflammation. So you have more liquid in there, you have more swelling, you have more redness, and that actually changes the shadow. But if you get rid of that swelling, that's why like ice on the face that reduces, like you said, blood flow and then gets rid of swelling and stuff, that will reduce the appearance, but doesn't mean the pore itself is any smaller.
Okay.
Maybe it is a little bit because
Well,
fluid, if it compresses it, maybe.
right, but again, there's not a major change in the structure of the
Yeah, I
particular
agree.
pore.
It's all, but it's all transient. But, okay.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. This question was asked by my friend because she says she uses retinoid products religiously. She applies them every morning, every night. She knows it's vitamin A, but she doesn't know what they do. Like besides, she said I put it on my face, and it makes me look better. But what does?
How old is this individual?
Oh, she's a woman. I will not put that information out there.
Well, we don't know her name. We
Is she
need
younger
to know
than
her.
30 or over
Yeah.
30?
She's in her mid-30s,
Okay.
but she uses it religiously.
Okay.
Because she wants to have the skin of a 20-year-old.
Photo damaged or non-photo damaged?
There's some damage.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then she should be able to see some improvements in that.
But what is the vitamin A actually doing to the skin or the skin cells?
I think
to
we should
improve
go through the fact that vitamin A is a generic term that.
Yeah.
So there's different forms of vitamin A, and I guess, are they all called retinoids? Yeah, retinoids. is just like
They'd be in the family of retinoids.
yeah. So retinoids and vitamin A are generic terms.
Oh, okay.
And so there's different kind of. You can start. I think what's the weakest one? It would be like an ester, right? That would be the weakest form.
Well, in direct activity, but again, you got to remember there's tons of esterases in the skin that would then cleave that if you're talking about putting it on, and that's why they do that, is to build stability.
Gotcha, yeah.
They put an ester on there, and then it gets cleaved by the.
But there's an extra step involved.
Correct.
So you would say, because they kind of look at it like there's several steps. So retinoic acid would be considered pure vitamin A that would, retinoic acid is what we think of when we think of the strongest type of natural retinoid.
For the natural piece, yeah.
Now there's also derivatives that are not natural that were made by man that are stronger, but stronger doesn't always mean better. It can also be more irritating. But then, so there's there's the esters, and there's the just retinol, and then there's retinaldehyde, and then retinoic acid, I believe.
Right. So there are retinoid acid receptors that certain ones will bind to and turn on certain genes that essentially will increase different aspects of elastin and collagen.
It has to be retinoic acid, right? Or something like retinoic acid.
Something like that. So it needs to bind to the receptor and be an agonist to the receptor. And there's a number of different retinoid receptors that have some benefits. Some actually cause irritation, or more towards causing irritation. Some cause more benefit towards production of collagen and elastin.
Yep.
So there's a tremendous amount of work as towards looking at different retinoid type compounds and seeing what receptors they bind to and what benefit they might have.
Yeah, and let me put a plug in for the microbiome here.
Okay.
Because one of the things that we've been seeing in our research at Crown is that the microbes that we've been studying, and we're about to release a product where we've been observing some interesting phenomena, and that is that things like collagen induction and other things that are equated with skin health and beauty, we've noticed that some of the microbes we're studying actually induce the upregulation similar to what we observe with things like vitamin C and retinols and such. So I don't want to say it's one for one, but what I do want to say is that some of the problems with retinols or retinoids is that they can do great things for the skin, but they're also very taxing on the skin. They can dry the skin out. They can irritate the skin, and part of the reason is because in order for us to get a big effect with them, you have to put enough on to make the kind of receptors light up, and then you get this kind of boost, and then it goes down, and so you have this dosage spike and this drop off. And you have to keep reapplying, and the problem is, it's great if you're activating those genes, but the thing is, then you're going to have this irritation that comes with it. I'm not sure if it's associated with the spike in genes or whatnot, but regardless, you get irritation with repeated use a lot. I can't even use the most
certain
gentle.
individuals, correct.
Yeah, I can't even use the most gentle. I'll get in 2 days worth of use, I'll get little ulcers on my face. And so for me, my philosophy is if we can get microbes that actually can induce these in a more low-level constant way, I think that's better for the skin. That's my philosophy. That's my biome care philosophy. But I'm not sure if everybody agrees, but I would say I would rather have that than these large dosage spikes. That's my personal opinion. So I'm not sure if you guys agree, but you're fired. I'm just kidding.
Well, I was going to say, if retinoic acid, can you build up a tolerance to that if it's, the receptors? And then at some point, if you build up a tolerance, you have to keep applying more and more and more.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's the way it
Or
works.
I don't know. I have to look at, some of the work that University of Michigan, Gary Fisher and his laboratory, and going back into the late 90s and early 2000s, I just go back and look at that as far as whether or not you build up tolerance. I don't know if it's actually been looked at.
I do know, and I myself, like I said, I can't use them, so I don't have expertise in myself how I acclimate to them, because it's hard to get used to them if you can't even use them for 2 days. But I do know that in the past, when Bellis, formerly Crown Aesthetics, formerly Bellis, used to sell, I think we still do sell a retinoid, we would say, if you can't tolerate it, you start at a lower amount and then you add on to that to get used to it.
Yeah, I agree with that part as far as being able to build up a tolerance towards being able to use it. Whether or not you're actually able to, where it's the case in which it no longer is effective.
Resistant to it.
That I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if you can become like a drug where you have to get more and more.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That's an interesting question, but I don't think you can.
Okay, do we have time for one last question? Or
I think one last question.
Okay, easy question. As a skin scientist, what key ingredients do you look for in your skincare products when you're buying them? I think I know Thomas's answer, but how about you, Brian?
You're fired.
I would say, I grew up, and looked in the skin as far as the time of the retinoids and AHAs. They work very well. Most people think about AHAs as towards exfoliation, but as we talked about for HAs as far as
Oh, I thought you
exfoliates.
said HAs. Okay.
Alpha hydroxy acids as far as
AHAs.
glycolic, phytic acid, and the like. And we just had our CEO on talking about that as far as
Glycolic, yeah.
on glycolic acid. But there's actually a lot of benefit, cellular benefit towards improvement in the skin with AHAs, not just the fact that it gets exfoliation and your skin is smoother. There's actually structural changes.
Yeah, and BHAs as well.
Yeah.
I actually
salicylic acid.
like sal acid. I
Yeah.
think is a great. You can use a low end and get a nice turnover without really hurting much of the skin or the microbiome.
Yeah.
And so I really think there is something there with just wisely choosing. Now, if you get into this kind of contest of more is better, then you start to get into a dangerous place.
Right.
Like these people that really want high AHAs and BHAs and retinoids and
Right,
stuff.
with low pHs and high levels and getting reactions that occur. Now, again, I will say I've been certainly impressed with the Zycrobe technology and the products that we've been testing and looking at the microbiome and how it has an effect. And so, again, I'm looking forward to see that doing quite well in the marketplace.
Yeah.
As well as not only just doing well in the marketplace, but actually seeing improvements in people's skin.
100%. I just want to give one anecdote that I saw on the internet where this kid took an AHA, like a 10, like whatever. It's pretty high. It's like the highest allowable AHA, BHA.
10%.
Well, there was BHA, so it's 2%, 10%.
Correct.
Yeah, so the highest level, and he microneedled it into his skin. And you're only supposed to leave it on without microneedling for 10 minutes. He left it on for an hour after microneedling. I don't know what happened to him, but I'm afraid his face fell off. So I hope it
Certainly,
didn't.
he probably was quite a bit red, and stinging, itching, burning was probably a minimum of what he had.
I got a feeling that kid probably had a trip to the ER, but I hope he's fine now. I don't mean to laugh at his, but that's the reason I'm saying is because I'm uncomfortable that people do that type of stuff. And so anyway, I think that's all we have time for today.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jose, and we'll do this again. We'll see how people like it because you have plenty of questions.
Yeah, I still have so many
Maybe
questions.
we'll end some of our podcasts with just a couple questions for everybody to answer. That's probably a good way to do it. We're trying new stuff here, everyone. All right. So anyway, thank you for your eyes and ears. We hope that you learned something from today's episode. If you'd like to follow us or ask us any questions, go to crownlaboratories.com, or you can contact me directly on my Instagram at dr.t.hitchcock. That's dr.t.hitchcock. And we will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.